You are listening to The Michael Lodge Show. Wealth, business, and taxes. Oh yeah, and some politics. Let's get started.
Well, here we are, a Thursday morning. Beautiful day, beautiful morning. I'm in South Florida, so most of the times we end up with good, beautiful mornings, and then by the middle of the day, we've got clouds and threatening of rain. I don't think that's going to happen today. I don't see that. I think there's a 10% chance of rain today. But it could happen. It could happen. But listen, I am thankful for the rain. I'm glad when the rain happens. I'm thrilled when we have green grass and green trees and everything is green. It's just trying to get from place to place in the rain. That's when it becomes tough. As you can hear, I still have a bad voice. My voice is still very low, very sexy. At least that's what I tell myself. I'm the only one that tells me that. And I'm believing it. But listen, I tell you, when you had a cold and it affected your voice, it's hard to get it back sometimes. I'm hoping it will go back. I see a better improvement today than I did yesterday. But listen, when you get these colds, it's hard to get rid of them, I tell you. It's hey, you know what? I everyone kept telling me, hey, why don't you go and get tested for COVID? I said, this is not COVID. This is a head cold. And I never get sick. So when I do get sick, I get really sick. And so I got this head cold. That was a bad head cold. No fevers, no nothing like that. Just a head cold. And so I decided, well, I'm going to just take some rest. I have a story to tell you about a friend of mine. She thought she was having a stroke. So she went into her hospital. They ran tests on her and did everything. And when she walked out, and she was, because she thought she had a copay, and they said, oh no, you don't have a copay, you're COVID. She says, no, I'm not COVID. I came in here for a stroke issue. They said, no, you're COVID. That's what you've been diagnosed. She said, I never took a COVID test, which she didn't. She didn't take any COVID tests. But when she walked out of that hospital, she was a COVID patient. And she said, I'm not going to fight it. Because she tried to fight it and everybody was getting testy with her. So she said, I am just going to walk out and forget about this thing. But then I asked her, I said, well, Is that on your record? So is that record going to be shared to, like, if you try to fly any place or anything? Or are they going to try to put you in quarantine? They didn't even say she needed to go into quarantine. They just marked her as a COVID patient. Not as a stroke victim patient, but as a COVID patient. So to me, that's one of the reasons why I did not want to go into the hospital, because I did not want to be, when I have a cold, being diagnosed or being marked as a COVID patient. I didn't want that. But that's what's happening within a lot of these hospitals now, is that they are miscoding you because there's money in a miscode. There's money in a miscode. So I want you to be aware of that. Sometimes when you go in to the hospital or to a clinic, make sure that you know what you've been coded as. Because if you went in there for a stroke, if you went in there for a leg injury, and then you come out as a COVID patient, something's wrong. Something's drastically wrong. Especially when they're not giving you a COVID test. My friend did not have a COVID test. She went in there. They put the EKG monitors on her and everything, but never ever did a COVID test. And that is a problem, with me anyway, because that's ethically not right for me. And of course, I'm going to tell you right now, the numbers that are being generated on these COVID deaths and tests and everything, they're not accurate. They are wrong they are wrong. And you saw this at the very beginning of COVID, where they were exaggerating the numbers, and then come to find out some states had to go back and change some of their reporting because they had included other deaths as part of COVID reporting. And we see this happen every single day, just as I told you with my friend. So what really upsets me is when CNN has that listing onto the side of their screen that keeps a counter going on who's getting infected and who's dying. It's unrealistic numbers. Totally unrealistic numbers. And by the way, if you notice that the flu numbers are practically zero this year for 2020. So did everybody get changed over from just plain old flu over to COVID? So I don't believe in the numbers. And as an accountant and as a numbers guy myself, I've been watching these numbers. And I don't believe them. I just do not believe them. This is my own personal opinion, okay? You can take it with a grain of salt. But this is how I feel, and I do not feel that these numbers are correct. I feel that they've been over-exaggerated. I think they've been manipulated. Just as the polls. The polls that you're seeing right now on this political race of ours, those numbers are corrupted numbers. And because the polling companies that are doing this are asking questions that are weighted. And they're only asking more Democrats to take this poll than they are Republicans. And the amount of people that they're asking, 1,800 people is not enough people. 1,000 people isn't enough. 500 people isn't enough. You need a good sampling of the crossroads of America to understand what is out there. And so the questions that they're asking are very weighted towards where they want your answer to be. So the polls that we're seeing at the moment are totally off. I remember in 2016, and I don't know why I did this, but I started to do it. I started looking at the polls, and I created my own spreadsheet, and I monitored those polls from every single place across the nation. And I was really monitoring not Biden, but Trump versus Hillary Clinton. And as I was looking at the actual polls that were being taken, I saw again what we're seeing this year is that the questions asked the people by the pollsters were weighted. And the amount of people being asked was not in the same vicinity. You had more Democrats being asked questions than Republicans or independents. So you did have an even balance sheet. That's one thing in accounting is that if you don't have if your assets do not equal your liabilities, there's something wrong. And that's what was happening in 2016. And so what I began to do on my spreadsheet, I began to take the average and for both individuals. And then I began to subtract errors. And the errors that I saw were in the questions being asked. And what I found is that at the end, when the election was all done, my analysis was correct because what I saw was that Clinton was not in the lead at any point during the election. She wasn't even close to being in the lead. So we have this really big situation that we could not get good numbers. Listen, numbers are so important. Numbers are important because it tells a story. In accounting, it tells a story. Finances, it tells a story. And when numbers are off, you have a bad situation. You have a very bad situation. So, when you can't tell a good, clean story with your numbers, there's an issue. And that's what we have seen with the polls. So I encourage all of you who are watching these polls and scared of the polls and what it's saying, don't pay any attention to the polls. Don't pay any attention. Because these numbers are not good numbers. They're trying to do exactly what they tried to do in 2016. And it didn't work then, and it's not going to work now. I think what you're going to see is a total opposite of what the pollsters are telling you. Total opposite. Because the numbers are screwed up. They're tainted. They're corrupted. By where they want you to think the election is really heading into. So don't pay attention to all this nonsense. And if CNN comes out with a poll, scrap it. If ABC comes out with a poll, scrap it. If Fox comes out with a poll, scrap it. It's worthless. And they did exactly the same. Remember the faces as everybody was sitting there on election night. And they would say, well, the polls are saying this and the polls are saying that. And then during the course of the night, all the polls were wrong. So from 2016 to 2020, they have not changed. It's still a political ploy. It's a political game where the networks are using polling companies to get to where they want you to think the election is. And it's corrupt. It's a bad way to do it. And the reporting styles of all of these networks, even Fox News, who used to be a friend to the conservative, but is no longer a friend, their numbers are wrong also. Listen, the reporting on these from these networks are totally wrong. And I'm getting tired of it. And I think that the American people should be getting tired of it also. There is a organization out there. It's called the Society of Professional Journalists. And you can go to their website, look them up, Google them, Society of Professional Journalists. And they have a code of ethics there. In fact, when I looked at it, when I was writing my book, it was on the front page. That code of ethics was on the front page. I don't know where it's at now. I haven't looked for quite some time. But they've got a code of ethics that every journalist is supposed to adhere to. But they're not. They're not at all. In my book, Ethically Thinking, It's Not That Hard. In chapter, let me see what chapter it's in. In chapter 5, The Ethics of the Media, I go through the code of ethics. And I talk about what they say that they're supposed to be doing, but they're not. One of them, and it's the very last portion of the Code of Ethics, it reads the following. Ethical journalism means taking responsibility for one's work and explaining one's decisions to the public. Journalists should explain ethical choices and processes to the audiences. Encourage a civil dialogue with the public about journalistic practices, coverage, and news content. Respond quickly to questions about accuracy, clarity, and fairness. Acknowledge mistakes and correct them promptly and explain corrections and clarifications carefully and clearly. Expose unethical conduct in journalism. Now, they're not doing any of that. Zero portion of that. Another portion of the Code of Ethics, it says, act independently. The highest and primary obligation of ethical journalism is to serve the public. Journalists should avoid conflicts of interest, real or perceived disclose avoidable conflicts, refuse gifts, favors, fees, free travel, and special treatment, and avoid political and other outside activities that may compromise integrity or impartiality or may damage credibility. Be wary of sources offering information. Offering information for favors or money. Do not pay for sources to news. Identify content provided by outside sources, whether paid or not. Deny favored treatment of to advertisers, donors, and other special interests, and resist internal and external pressure to influence coverage. Distinguish news from advertising and shun hybrids that blur the lines between the two. Prominently label sponsored content. Are they doing that? No, they're not doing it. They're not doing any of it. I suggest that you go to that website or buy my book, Ethically Thinking. It's not that hard. It's on Amazon by Michael Lodge. And go through the code of ethics of those who claim that they are journalists. And you will find that journalism has no longer a code of ethics. They no longer have the ability to tell the truth. They are swayed by politics or their own personal political views. So there is no more real journalism out there. And these are the people who are reporting on COVID, who are reporting on the election, who are reporting on polls. If they have no ethics as a journalist, do not ever expect that the numbers and the data that they are throwing at you are even close to correct. Because that leads to a highly unethical behavior. When you go past the lines of ethics and you are willing to bend the truth or not report the truth because of your own personal political views or what your employment's political views are. Remember, you're supposed to be independent of all politics, political views that you believe is right. Your job as a journalist is to report the news in the news only, not your personal feelings, not your boss's feelings. So if you are violating the journalist's code of ethics, I have very little faith in what you're reporting to me. I have no faith. To tell you the truth, I have no faith. A year ago, probably even more than a year ago now, I turned off the news. I spend only 30 days gleaming information that I want to know about. And I turned off the major networks. I no longer watch CNN or Fox or any of those characters. Because what I found was, as I was writing my book 2 years ago, that journalists were not following a code of ethics. As an accountant, I tell you, right next to me, while I'm recording this on my desk, I have right beside me a big picture that says the code of ethics for accountants. And I look at that every single day. It's in front of me. And I have to ask the question, am I fulfilling the code of ethics that accountants have to live by? tax professionals have to live by. And the problem with journalists is that it has become so tabloid type of organizations that their ethics are gone. They're no longer reporting. They are just performing as a tabloid organization that is just repeating or pushing their own view on what's going on. Not the actual event or the actual news story, but they are pushing their own political views. CNN does it every single day. MSNBC does it every single day. Fox does it every single day. However, what the problem with Fox at the moment is that people have caught on to Fox. And they see that Fox is no longer a friend to the conservatives out there. In fact, conservatives are getting attacked very heavily by Fox. So it's a sad situation. So I suggest that you go out there, do your own due diligence, and see what the code of ethics are for journalists. And you will find that they are not fulfilling their responsibilities as journalists. In fact, they're no longer even journalists because they have no ethics. Just like accountants are no longer accountants when they have no ethics. Attorneys are no longer attorneys when they have no ethics. And at some point in time, we have to make a decision on what we're listening to that say that they are a news organization, but in actuality, they're not. So we have this big time problem at the moment. I hopefully that some of you saw the senatorial hearing yesterday where they brought in 3 individuals from Facebook. One was from Facebook, Twitter, and Google. So Facebook, Twitter, and Google's. Their CEOs came in. They were not able to answer the question when asked by the senators, name me one liberal individual that you have shut down their Twitter account or Facebook account. And they could not name one single name. They said, well, we'll have to get back to you. But they could name, and they knew about, every single conservative outlet that was shut down. So we have this problem even within our social media outlets, that the freedom of speech has been tampered with, and it is being tampered with. And if you are an American, if you believe in the Constitution, you should take very special note in this, because at some point in time, and it has happened to me, where what I've said has been scrutinized by social media people who are supposed to stop whatever they're supposed to stop. And in actuality, I spoke the truth. And when the fact checker decided to give me a good explanation, he didn't even give me the explanation. He gave me a lecture, but he provided me with no proof or no documentation as to why my statement was incorrect. But he gave me a lecture. And so many different times, people have posted on Twitter or Facebook or Google and have been sanctioned. I call it sanctioned because, honestly, they won't allow you to proceed with your account unless you remove what you posted. That happened to me on Twitter. I posted a story that came from New York Times. I posted it. the fact checker or whoever is looking at this stuff closed down my account, closed it up, froze it. They said the only way that you can go back and start using your account again is if you delete the post that you originally posted. And I said, no, that's not true, because I have not done anything that is illegal. I have not posted anything that was violent or hateful. So you tell me why you took it off. It's because they did not like the post. And I wasn't the only one that got banned until I removed that post and could go back using my account. But that's how they work. Finally, I deleted it, but I reposted it, and they never took it down again. So I have a problem with Instagram, and I have a problem with Twitter and Facebook and Google, who try to control my speech. I don't believe in hateful speech on the internet. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in posting lies. I don't believe in taking something and making it into fiction. I don't believe in that. But I believe that I should have the ability to go onto the social media outlets and be able to say what I want to say, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else, as long as I'm not promoting hate or I'm promoting a lie. Now, on the New York Times post that they had, that Twitter banned their account until, in fact, it's still banned today until they remove that original tweet. The CEO of Twitter said yesterday, we were wrong in doing that. So you can go ahead and post it. So we a whole bunch of us, we went out on Twitter, and then also on Facebook. We reposted it, but with the words, testing freedom of speech. Because we felt that our freedom of speech to repost an article that came from a nationwide newspaper was not wrong. It did not promote a lie. As Twitter originally said, it was promoting misinformation. So we have to get back to this code of ethics, because if these individuals are not acting ethically towards the American people and in the information that they're providing you and the services that are providing you regarding freedom of speech, we have a serious problem, and our Constitution is being challenged and is being threatened. And our constitutional rights are being challenged and in some cases corrupted. So we, as Americans, we have to be very careful about this. If you don't know the Constitution, get a copy. It's not that long. The Constitution is not that long. Get a book. Put it in your pocket. Read it at your lunch hour. But know your constitutional rights. And that's the problem, is that Americans don't know that. People are not being trained in school, in our grade schools, and in our high schools, in our colleges. They do not know the Constitution. They know the political views, but they do not know the Constitution of the United States and how it protects you and me. It protects our religious freedom. It protects our speech. It protects our rights. And there's a whole bunch of rights. But Americans do not know that anymore because they have not been taught it in school. And that's a big problem. When I was in school, when I was a young boy and had to walk 5 miles in the snow, we were taught the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We had to memorize some of it. That was the part of our schooling. We had to memorize those documents. Then we had school plays about it. We had discussions about it. We had all kinds of different activities that reminded us about how important the Constitution and the role of the Constitution is in our lives. But that doesn't happen anymore. Because teachers are no longer teaching that aspect of our great country. That's why you see so many misguided individuals who are out in the streets and who are vandalizing and destroying neighborhoods, looting stores, destroying property. Because they have no respect for the rule of law or for the Constitution of the United States. And if they were really smart, they would know that that Constitution protects their civil rights. It protects their freedom of speech. But instead, what do? They try to burn it down. They try to tear it apart. They try to get rid of the law enforcement. They don't understand the Constitution and how it works and how it can work for them. Just 1 second. I have to get a sip here of my coffee. Just one moment. I listen. I love this country. I love everything about it. But this political season is a dirty, rotten, corrupt political season. And you've got a whole bunch of dirty, rotten, corrupt politicians who are trying to destroy our nation, who are trying to turn it into a socialist country. And they're trying to abandon the Constitution of the United States that protects you and protects me. Our vote matters. Our lives matter. Our nation matters. And if we do not choose wisely and support those candidates that are going to defend the Constitution and not try to destroy it, destroying it by trying to pack the courts, trying to get more justices on there that are politically motivated instead of constitutionally motivated. You see, the problem, what's happening right now with the Democratic side is that they want to change a constitutional system into a political system. The Justice Department, or not the Justice Department, I'm sorry, but the Supreme Court is a place where politics stops at the front door and the Constitution takes over. So they are seeing all of these challenges in court, and they have to apply the Constitution how it is towards that challenge, that court challenge. They do not make a decision based on political views, but they are to make their decisions based on constitutional, legal views. And what the Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to move it into more of a political system instead of a judicial system. And so they want to add more individuals to the court so that they can bring in more Democrats or liberals to fill those positions. If you look at the latest judge that was put on the bench, if you look at her writings and if you look at her knowledge of the law, she was an excellent candidate. Now what the Democrats are trying to do, so she is now a Supreme Court justice. So what the Democrats are threatening her with, because there's some election cases that are sitting in the court today, there's more than 30 of them sitting in the court that will go to the Supreme Court. And the Democrats are saying, listen, Justice, if you don't recuse yourself from the decision-making process on this election court issue, we're going to impeach you. So automatically, politically, Democrats are trying to attack a judicial judge based on politics. Now, if justices who are supposed to be independent of any kind of politics, begins to bend in any which way, then politics is won over. But if that judge is there to look at the court case in the eyes, in the heart of the Constitution, then she or he are doing their job. That's what they are there for. Not to be politicians, not to change policies, not to create policies, I should say, but they are there to interpret the Constitution of the United States as it applies to that court case, whatever court case it may be. And that is where we need to focus on as Americans, making sure that our judicial branch does not get politicized. And so when Democrats in Congress or in the Senate begin to threaten the judicial branch, then we have a very dangerous situation. And it seems as though that the Democrats are very willing to challenge the Supreme Court, challenge the Constitution, so that they can have their politics override everything. And that is wrong. So I'm going to stop right there, because the more and more I think about it, I become mad. And I don't want to have a mad day. I want to have a day where I'm going to help people in mediations. I've got 3 mediations I've got to hear today, all various kinds. I want to have a good heart, a good mind, a positive mind, because I've got to help these people resolve issues. Politics never resolves issues. But people that want to make a change get involved. So I'm asking each and every single one of you, if you haven't voted, take a very careful look at what's going on. Understand the complexities of what's going on. Take some time to understand it. Your vote can make some changes. I keep saying this over and over, our vote matters. Our vote matters, our lives matter, our nation matters. So we have to make good decisions when you and I vote. Now, I'm done. I feel good about my vote. I voted. I went down to the poll, and I sat there in the booth, and I made my decisions. And I'm done. And once it's done, and once you've cast your vote, now you have to wait for the final results. There may be a changeover of power, and there may not be. But whatever happens, you have to live with that. You did your civic duty. You're a good American, and you went and voted. Now you have to wait for the will of the people. That's all it's about. If you want to make changes after the election, if you have problems with specific issues, fight for those issues. But you have to, after this election, you have to monitor what's going on in Congress, because there's a lot of deception that goes on in Congress. There are a lot of bills that are out there in one name, but have a whole bunch of little tiny bills attached to it that may do damage to you and me. Pay attention. There are podcasts out there that go over all these bills every single day. Get involved. Being involved is what good Americans do. Don't be a lazy American and just sit back and wonder what's going on. Get involved. 2020 is the year to get involved and moving forward. Listen, if you have any questions or any comments, send me a text. 818-252-5682. Again, that's 818-252-5682. Go to Amazon.com. Buy my book, Ethically Thinking It's Not That Hard. And also buy my other book there. It's called Daily Strategy, Mediating the Full Day in Our Lives and in Business. Again, this is Mike Lodge. Everybody go out and have a great day. I'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye. This content has been produced by Michael Lodge, fully focused on content every single day. Talk with you soon. Bye-bye.